Breaking. King Charles just confronted Keir Starmer in the most explosive royal intervention since the abdication crisis. What he said about Britain's pensioners could trigger a constitutional meltdown, potentially destroying Labour's government within days. Just 90 minutes ago, sources inside Buckingham Palace confirmed that the King summoned the Prime Minister for an emergency meeting. No cameras, no press release, no protocol. This wasn't ceremonial, it was war. What transpired behind those palace doors is now sending shockwaves through Westminster. The stakes are higher than ever for every British pensioner watching this video. If you want to see how this crisis unfolds in the next 48 hours, hit that subscribe button now, because what we're about to reveal will change everything you thought you knew about who really runs Britain. Here's what sparked the constitutional crisis nobody saw coming. 3 days ago, leaked Treasury documents revealed something absolutely devastating. While Starmer's government slashed winter fuel payments for 10 million pensioners, saving £1.4 billion, they simultaneously approved £3. £2 billion in foreign aid increases and asylum support. The contrast was so brutal, so indefensible, that even Labour backbenchers started panicking. Margaret Atkinson, an 81-year-old widow from Yorkshire, told RTV News that she is choosing between heating and eating this winter. Her exact words were chilling. "I worked 50 years, paid my taxes, raised 3 children, and now my own government tells me I don't deserve to stay warm." That interview went viral. Within 24 hours, it had 8.7 million views across social media. But Starmer's response was even worse than his silence. He was dismissive. During Prime Minister's questions last Wednesday, he actually said the cuts were fiscally responsible and necessary for long-term stability. The backlash was swift and devastating. Meanwhile, the Daily Mail published photographs that ignited a firestorm across Britain. Asylum seekers in 4-star hotels in London, Manchester and Birmingham, receiving free meals, heating, Wi-Fi and security. The government is spending £8 million per day, £2, £9 billion per year, while British pensioners who built this nation freeze in their own homes. Joan Richards, a 74-year-old former nurse from Newcastle, recorded a video outside her freezing council flat that destroyed whatever sympathy Labour had left. "I delivered babies in the NHS for 40 years, she said, shivering in 3 jumpers. Now I can't afford to heat my home while strangers get hotel rooms." That clip hit 12 million views in just 36 hours. The contrast is so grotesque, so morally bankrupt, that even traditional Labour supporters are abandoning the party in droves. Savant poll published yesterday showed that 79% of Britons believe the government's priorities are completely backwards. In Labour heartlands like Liverpool, Cardiff and Glasgow, support has collapsed by 18 points in just 2 weeks. We're talking catastrophic numbers that signal something far bigger than a political scandal. This is a crisis of legitimacy. And Starmer just lost the working class forever. But wait, there's another layer to this pensioner scandal that makes it even more devastating for Starmer. Documents obtained by The Telegraph reveal that senior civil servants actually warned the Treasury about the political risks months ago. In a memo dated July 15th, Cabinet Secretary Simon Case explicitly cautioned that cutting winter fuel payments while maintaining high asylum spending would create catastrophic optics and potentially irreversible damage to public trust. Rachel Reeves ignored the warning completely. She pushed the cuts through anyway, believing the media cycle would move on and voters would forget by the next election. That calculation was spectacularly wrong. What Reeves and Starmer failed to understand is that this isn't just about money, it's about values, priorities, and who matters in modern Britain. And the answer Labour gave was clear. Foreign nationals matter more than British pensioners. That message resonated in every town, every village, every community where elderly people are struggling. The human stories emerging daily are absolutely heartbreaking and politically toxic. Robert Harrison, an 88-year-old Falklands veteran from Portsmouth, told Sky News he's wearing his military medals to stay warm because he sold his winter coat to pay electricity bills. Elizabeth Norton, a 76-year-old grandmother from Manchester, who worked as a school teacher for 45 years, admitted she's spending entire days at the local library because it's heated and her flat isn't. These aren't abstract statistics. These are real people with names, faces, and histories of service to Britain. And every single story chips away at Labour's credibility until there's nothing left but rubble. Then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles, who has spent his entire reign avoiding political controversy, broke 300 years of royal protocol. Last Thursday, at a Buckingham Palace reception for military veterans, he delivered remarks that palace insiders are calling the most politically charged speech by a modern monarch in history. Standing before 200 decorated servicemen and women, many now struggling pensioners themselves, Charles spoke with barely contained emotion. Those who served this nation with courage and sacrifice, he declared, his voice cracking slightly, deserve better than to choose between warmth and dignity in their final years. The room erupted in applause that lasted 47 seconds, but here's what the mainstream media didn't report. Charles went completely off script. The prepared remarks, leaked to the Telegraph this morning, contain none of that language. Senior palace aides told the king it was too political, too dangerous, too provocative. He ignored them completely. One source close to the king, speaking on condition of anonymity, revealed something even more explosive. His Majesty is furious, absolutely livid. The palace officially denies any political motivation, but the timing, location, and deliberate word choice were all calculated. Charles just fired a warning shot across Downing Street's bow, and Starmer knows it. Within 6 hours of that speech, the entire political landscape shifted beneath Labour's feet. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak, sensing blood in the water, announced an emergency motion of no confidence. The Prime Minister has lost the trust of the British people, and now he's lost the respect of the Crown itself. Sunak declared in a televised address. His exact words were devastating. When even the king breaks his silence to defend Britain's pensioners, you know this government has crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Nigel Farage went even further. Standing outside Parliament with Reform UK banners waving behind him, he called for immediate elections. King Charles has shown more leadership in 2 minutes than Keir Starmer has shown in 6 months, Farage proclaimed to roaring crowds. The monarch understands what this government refuses to accept. You don't betray the people who built this country. Catastrophic for Labour. While the king stands with pensioners, Starmer looks like he's abandoned them. While Charles shows emotion and empathy, Starmer appears cold and calculating. The contrast couldn't be more damaging if Labour's opposition had scripted it themselves. Social media exploded instantly. Hashtags like #DefendOurPensioners and #CharlesStandStrong hit #1 trending globally within 3 hours. TikTok videos showing the King's speech intercut with shivering pensioners garnered 40 million views by Friday morning. One particularly viral post juxtaposed Charles's emotional remarks with footage of Starmer laughing at a Labour fundraiser the same evening. The caption read, "Which leader actually cares about Britain?" It's been shared 2.3 million times, and the damage is incalculable. But here's where it gets exponentially worse for Starmer. And this is the layer that could trigger his removal within days. Inside number 10, Downing Street, witnesses describe absolute pandemonium. Cabinet ministers are at each other's throats over how to respond to the King's intervention. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner allegedly erupted during an emergency strategy meeting Friday night, shouting that Starmer's handling of the pensioner crisis was political suicide, dressed up as fiscal responsibility. Health Secretary Wes Streeting was overheard, telling allies that the government has maybe 72 hours before this becomes unrecoverable. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, who designed the winter fuel cut in the first place, has gone completely silent, refusing all media interviews and cancelling 3 scheduled appearances. Insiders say she's distancing herself from Starmer, preparing her own leadership campaign before the ship goes down completely. WhatsApp groups with names like Labour Survivors and Post-Star Planning are lighting up with coup discussions. Senior MPs are comparing notes, counting votes, strategizing about timing. The question isn't if they'll move against Starmer anymore. It's when and whether they can do it before Charles escalates even further. Because that's the nightmare scenario keeping Labour awake at night. What if the king doesn't stop with speeches? And here's where it gets really interesting. The panic inside Labour isn't just about political survival anymore. It's about legacy, about how history will remember this moment and this government. Senior MP who've spent decades building Labour's reputation are watching it crumble in real time. Former Cabinet Minister Peter Mandelson, who rarely comments on current leadership, gave a devastating interview to the BBC yesterday morning. His words were carefully chosen, but absolutely brutal. When you lose the working class, you lose elections. When you lose pensioners, you lose your soul. When you lose the king's confidence, you lose legitimacy itself. This trifecta is unprecedented in Labour history. That statement from a party grand sent shockwaves through Westminster, because Mandelson doesn't speak unless the situation is terminal. His intervention signals that the party's elder statesman believes Starmer is finished, and they're already thinking about damage control for Labour's long-term future. Meanwhile, focus groups conducted across Middle England reveal something even more damaging than polls. Voters aren't just angry at Starmer, they're disgusted. The emotional response has shifted from political disagreement to moral revulsion. One participant in a Birmingham focus group captured the sentiment perfectly. He looks at British pensioners and sees numbers on a spreadsheet. The king looks at them and sees human beings who deserve dignity. That tells me everything about who should be leading this country. That kind of visceral emotional rejection doesn't fade with a policy U-turn or a good speech. It's permanent reputational damage that follows a leader forever. Palace sources confirm something extraordinary that hasn't been reported anywhere else yet. The king has requested unprecedented access to Treasury forecasts, pension statistics, and social care budgets. Under constitutional convention, the monarch receives regular briefings from government on major policy issues. But requesting specific financial data on pensioner welfare, that's virtually unknown in modern times. One former palace advisor told us, if Charles is digging into the numbers personally, he's preparing to take a stronger position. The monarchy doesn't do that unless they're ready to use their influence in ways we haven't seen in generations. Think about what that means for Starmer's government. If the king publicly questions the fiscal justification for cutting pensioner support, Labour's entire economic argument collapses. Every time Starmer claims the cuts are necessary, Charles can counter with evidence that the money exists, but priorities are wrong. So the Prime Minister can't argue with the king. The moment he tries, he looks like he's attacking the monarchy itself, and British voters will crucify him for it. The optics of that confrontation would be absolutely devastating. Behind closed doors at Westminster, the panic is reaching critical mass. Labour MP facing re-election in 18 months are terrified. In constituencies across Northern England, Wales and Scotland, where pensioners are a massive voting bloc, the backlash is already catastrophic. Polling conducted over the weekend shows Labour losing 43 seats if an election were held today. 3 seats gone because Starmer chose foreign aid over British pensioners and then got publicly rebuked by the king himself. That's not a political stumble. That's an extinction-level event for any government. And the contagion is spreading fast beyond just Labour. The Liberal Democrats, usually comfortable in opposition, are positioning themselves as the pensioner protection party. Leader Ed Davey announced a comprehensive winter support package that directly contradicts Labour policy. While the Prime Minister cuts and the King condemns, we will actually help the people who built Britain, Davey declared at a campaign event in Eastbourne. Even the Scottish National Party, normally focused on independence, is hammering Labour over pensioner welfare. Nicola Sturgeon's successor, John Swinney, called the cuts morally obscene and promised Scotland would top up payments if Westminster won't. Labour is being attacked from every angle simultaneously, while the King's criticism hangs over everything, like a dark cloud of constitutional judgment. But here's the twist that could end Starmer's career completely. And this hasn't been reported anywhere yet. Leaked documents from a late-night cabinet meeting reveal something absolutely explosive about what really happened when Charles confronted Starmer yesterday. According to multiple sources who attended the emergency palace meeting, the king didn't just express concern about pensioners. He allegedly presented Starmer with a dossier compiled by his private office. Inside that dossier were testimonials from 47 military veterans facing fuel poverty, detailed breakdowns of government spending priorities, and a point-by-point rebuttal of Treasury claims that the cuts were unavoidable. Charles came prepared, not for a ceremonial chat, but for an intellectual dismantling of Labour's entire fiscal justification. One source described the Prime Minister as visibly shaken when confronted with the level of preparation. But here's the devastating part. When Starmer tried to defend the policy using standard Treasury talking points, Charles reportedly cut him off with 7 words that may define this entire crisis. Prime Minister, I've read the numbers myself. Think about that moment. The King of England, armed with government data, personally fact-checking the Prime Minister to his face. That's not constitutional monarchy as Britain has known it for centuries. That's active intervention in policy. Debate. If those documents are real, and if they show what our sources claim, then Starmer didn't just lose an argument with the king. He lost any credibility to claim fiscal necessity justified abandoning British pensioners. The implications are absolutely staggering, and nobody in government is denying the meeting happened, which tells you everything you need to know. And wait, because there's yet another bombshell that just emerged in the last few hours, making this constitutional crisis even more explosive. The Times has obtained internal Labour Party polling conducted immediately after the King's speech last Thursday. The numbers are so catastrophic that senior strategists wanted them buried completely. In traditional Labour strongholds that the party has held for 50, 60, even 70 years straight, support has collapsed by margins that pollsters are calling statistically unprecedented in modern British politics. We're talking about constituencies like Bolsover, Bassetlaw, and Bishop Auckland, where Labour's lead has evaporated completely in just 5 days. 5 days. In some areas, Reform UK has surged past both Labour and the Conservatives to take the lead for the first time ever recorded. Nigel Farage's party is now the first choice of 34% of pensioners nationally, according to a Redfield and Wilton survey published this morning. That's a 19-point swing from Labour in 2 weeks. 19 points. Electoral analysts are calling it the fastest demographic realignment in British polling history. Professor Sir John Curtis, Britain's most respected political scientist, told The Guardian that if these numbers hold, Labour faces electoral annihilation in pensioner-heavy constituencies that form the backbone of their parliamentary majority. He used the word annihilation. Sod. Not defeat, not setback, annihilation. That's the level of panic Labour is experiencing right now. And here's the truly terrifying part for Starmer's government. This isn't just about one policy anymore. The pensioner scandal has become a symbol of everything voters believe is wrong with modern Labour. Out-of-touch elites in London, making decisions that betray working people, prioritising fashionable causes over British citizens, and abandoning traditional values for progressive ideology. Every complaint, every frustration, every resentment that's been building for years has crystallised around this one issue. And King Charles, intentionally or not, has become the figurehead for everyone who feels left behind by Starmer's government. Meanwhile, outside the palace walls and Westminster bubbles, something even more dangerous is building on Britain's streets. Pensioner advocacy groups, military veteran organisations, and grassroots movements are organising the largest demonstrations London has seen in a decade. A coalition called Dignity for All, founded by former soldiers and retired nurses, announced protests scheduled for this Saturday outside Downing Street, Parliament and Labour Party headquarters. They're calling it the Winter Warmth March, and early estimates suggest 100,000 people could attend. The symbolism is absolutely brutal for Starmer, Britain's elderly and veterans, people who sacrifice for their country, marching against a Labour government while the King publicly defends them. That image will define British politics for years. But it gets worse. Reform UK has officially endorsed the march, and Nigel Farage confirmed he'll be attending alongside military veterans and pensioner representatives. This is no longer just a protest. It's a coordinated political assault on Labour's legitimacy, with the King's moral authority backing it, and Farage's political machinery amplifying it. For the first time in modern British history, the monarch and a populist opposition movement are functionally aligned against the sitting government. Constitutional experts are calling it unprecedented and potentially dangerous. Professor Helena Whitmore of Cambridge warned in the Times this morning, "We're watching two separate crises merge into something Britain hasn't faced since 1936. A prime minister losing public confidence while simultaneously alienating the crown creates conditions where constitutional conventions break down entirely." She stopped short of predicting what comes next, but her message was clear. Britain is entering uncharted territory, and nobody knows how this ends. The international dimension is making everything exponentially worse for Britain's global reputation and Starmer's domestic position. The Wall Street Journal ran a front-page story yesterday titled "Britain's Pensioner Scandal Exposes Post-Brexit Priorities Crisis." CNN featured a segment comparing British pensioners in cold homes with asylum seekers in heated hotels, calling it a tale of two Britons that exposes deep divisions about national identity. Even the French press, usually dismissive of British affairs, is covering the story extensively. Le Monde published an analysis suggesting that Britain's social contract is fracturing in ways that could reshape European politics for a generation. The global humiliation is real, and it's damaging Britain's standing as a stable, mature democracy. Foreign investors are watching nervously as political chaos unfolds. The pound has dropped 2.3% against the dollar in the last week as currency traders factor in political instability and potential government collapse. The FTSE 100 has shed £47 billion in value as market confidence evaporates. Britain is starting to look like a country in crisis, not just politically, but economically and socially. And at the centre of it all stands Starmer, increasingly isolated, increasingly desperate, and increasingly unable to control the forces he unleashed when he chose foreign aid over British pensioners. The next 72 hours will determine whether Keir Starmer survives as Prime Minister or becomes the shortest-serving Labour leader in modern history. Emergency meetings are scheduled throughout the weekend, as Labour MP decide whether to act now or wait for the situation to deteriorate further. Angela Rayner is working the phones relentlessly, speaking with backbenchers one-on-one. Inside Downing Street, Starmer looks increasingly isolated, surrounded by advisors who know the ship is sinking, but can't agree on how to save it. Palace sources confirm the King has cleared his schedule for the entire week, an extraordinary move that suggests he's preparing for further intervention if needed. Some insiders whisper that Charles is considering an unprecedented televised address directly to the British people, bypassing government entirely to speak about duty, sacrifice, and the social contract. If that happens, if the King goes over Starmer's head to the public, Labour's government is finished. This crisis will be studied for decades as the moment a British Prime Minister forgot who he served and paid the ultimate political price. At its epicenter stands Keir Starmer, who looks increasingly desperate, increasingly isolated, and increasingly finished. So here's the question that matters right now. Does Starmer resign before Labour removes him? Or does he fight and destroy his party in the process? Did King Charles just end a government with one speech? Or will Starmer somehow survive the greatest political crisis of his career? And here's what I really want to know. Do you think the King was right to intervene? Or should the monarchy stay completely silent no matter what? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because we read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in Britain right now. The mainstream media is downplaying this crisis, but we're telling you the full truth. Tomorrow, we're breaking down the leaked palace dossier and exactly what evidence Charles presented to Starmer. You won't want to miss that. This constitutional crisis is far from over.